Welcome back to the second episode of the Benchwarmers podcast presented by FL Teams. I'm your co-host David Markovitz alongside with my co-host Jackson Heller. We're excited to get back into hockey. Training camp, I believe, starts in less than a week. And yeah, just an exciting time to see all these young players potentially compete for roster spots. But first, we have to talk about some sad news that happened over the last week. Johnny Hockey, him and his brother Matthew, unfortunately passed away in a accident involving a car. Jackson.
Yeah, like you said, Jonathan and Matthew were both great players. Obviously, Johnny was an all-star. His brother, D1 hockey player, never really established himself as an NHL player, obviously. But
His
they're
impact
both
was felt definitely, though.
exactly. They're both great people, more importantly than players. Like I was watching a Blue Cruise podcast last night, and one of them's from Jersey, and they were talking about how they knew Johnny and they knew Matthew and how an impact they made on the community, especially with hockey, and how they helped grow it down there, and how they helped players that maybe thought that they were too small to help them gain confidence, I guess you could say, and set an example. And like players like Cole Caulfield now coming out, changing his number to number 13 to show his support. And yeah, I mean, it's really sad. They were both great people, great players. And I mean, thoughts and prayers to the Gaudreau family. And yeah.
The Columbus Blue Jackets, they issued the following statement after the passing of Johnny Gaudreau and his brother Matthew. I'm going to read it for you guys now. The Columbus Blue Jackets were shocked and devastated by the unimaginable tragedy. Johnny was not only a great hockey player, but more significantly, a loving husband, father, son, brother, and friend. We extend our heartfelt sympathies to his wife Meredith, his children Noah and Johnny, his parents, their family and friends on the sudden loss of Johnny and Matthew. Johnny played the game with great joy, which was felt by everyone that saw him on the ice. He brought a genuine love for hockey with him everywhere he played, from Boston College to the Calgary Flames to Team USA to the Blue Jackets. He thrilled his fans in only a way Johnny Hockey could. The impact he had on our organization and our sport was profound, but pals in comparison to the unidable impression he made on everyone who knew him. Johnny embraced our community when he arrived 2 years ago, and Columbus welcomed him with open arms. We will miss him terribly and we'll do everything that we can to support his family and each other through this tragedy. At this time, we ask for prayers for the Gaudreau family and their privacy to be respected as they grieve. So it was announced recently that the funeral will be held Monday, and all Columbus Blue Jackets players and management will be in attendance of his funeral, I believe, in Jersey. I believe some Flames players will be in attendance also. But you see all the outpouring for him, the huge impact that he had on the NHL community, like you said before, Jackson. Cole Caulfield changed his number because we saw him be inspired to play by Johnny Hockey as he was a small guy. And he just inspired a lot of kids in the South Philly, Jersey area.
I think it's so messed up that the driver of that vehicle that hit them was so selfish. He didn't think about anyone else when he thought to get in a car after, like he said to the police officers, 5 to 6 beers. He never thought like that he would be putting other people's lives in danger. And then I don't know if you watched the court, like when he was in court and what he said, how he was complaining that he'd have to be held over the weekend, over Labor Day weekend. I think it's the most selfish thing you could do. I think in this day and age, there's so many different like ways you can get home after you drink. There's Uber, there's Lyft, there's so many ways. You could have a designated driver. you could walk, take a train. Like there's so many ways, and it's just so unfortunate that he didn't not think of it, but that he was so selfish and thought I'm just gonna drive home. And like it's sad because like Johnny Hockey, 2 kids, very young, probably when they grow up won't even have memories of his dad.
His
And
brother had a kid on the way
and his
also.
brother had a kid on the way, which they had a GoFundMe, which was only supposed like the goal was to raise 60K, and they raised I thought it was over 500,000 last time I
Yeah, I
checked.
think it's past that at this point.
It is unreal the amount of support from players. Like I know as a Rangers fan, I saw that Artemi Panarin they donated $1,000, and other players like I saw McKinnon donated too. But I mean the amount of support from like friends, family, and players and people that didn't even know him personally, but he was a hero is absurd. And like you could see on Instagram, NHL's Instagram and Bleacher Report's Instagram yesterday, how there was a Edmonton fan holding up a sign saying "Doesn't matter the jersey, we're all here to support him," something along the lines of that. Like putting hockey aside and the rivalry aside, it's such a sad thing, and it's nice to see the whole NHL community come together and support and mourn such great people. So
I mean, a few things to say. One, if there's anything that you take away from this podcast, this should be the main thing that you take away. Do not drink and drive. There are so many options now today. Uber, Lyft, taxi, call a friend, anything. That is the biggest point we want to reiterate. Do not drink and drive because you can cause yourself suffering, your family suffering, other people's lives can be ruined, like the tragedy we just saw. But a few other things. One, you just have to see how much of an outpouring there was for Johnny and his brother Matthew. I think this is probably, even though the NHL is a $6 billion league, this is probably the closest community of a $6 billion company. You see all the outpouring, no matter from what team you support, what player you are. If you didn't even like Johnny Hockey, which I doubt there's anyone who didn't like him because he was such a personable player, such a likable player, such an exciting young player. You see how the community came together, like Jackson, like how you said about how the Oilers fans, they even went to to Scotiabank and they laid flowers, and you see all the support for him and his brother and how many lives they touched. And you see the impact that they just left on the locker room and on teams and on people. And you just have to feel heartbroken. It's a gut-wrenching feeling that these two young brothers were taken in the primes of their life. And as they say, it's a hard thing for a parent to lay a child to rest, but imagine having to lay 2 children to rest after such
the
a
day
tragic event.
before your sister's wedding, and then not only that, like obviously what happened to them is horrible, but hopefully it spreads some awareness. Like there's people out there that get killed by drunk drivers every day, but they're kind of swept under the rug because they don't have as big of names. So although this sucks, there's something good about this being like, don't do this. Like this is horrible. Don't drink and drive. And it's kind of like a big name and it sucks. Don't get me wrong, it sucks. But it also kind of spreads awareness to everyone else that has passed away in a drunk driving incident because they have more support, so to say. They have a place to go. They can connect in a way, and they could like speak about it and hopefully get their own stories heard, because there's so many families that go through this type of situation every day, but don't get the $50,000 or $500,000 that the Gaudreau family got from the GoFundMe because it's not as publicly known. So like David said, take anything away from this podcast, not only today, but in general, don't drink and drive. Not even if you had one beer, like it's
better to play it safe always.
Even if it's like $100 Uber, $100 is way better than spending the rest of your life in prison or taking
someone else's life,
if not more than one person. You don't know what you're going to do behind the wheel. You don't know how you're going to feel with what you drink. That's never the right answer ever.
All the players that were donating to Matthew in support of his wife and his unborn child, Tripp, all the players, all the teammates. And you just have to feel for certain guys like Kevin Hayes. He lost one of his best friends in Johnny Gaudreau last week. And a few years ago, his brother, Jimmy Hayes. They all played together at BC or BU. No, BC, sorry. But you also have to feel for the Columbus Blue Jackets. 2 tragedies that happened in the past few years, like Johnny Hockey and Martinez Connectus, the goalie, who died tragically in a firework accident. And you also have to feel for Sean Monahan, one of Johnny Gaudreau's best friends, chose Columbus to help Johnny Gaudreau reignite his offensive spark that he had back in his Calgary days. You just have to feel for all of that.
Back on the Kevin Hayes thing, I don't know if you remember a couple years ago when we were at the hotel in Fort Lauderdale and we met him. He was such a nice dude. Like, he got up out of a family lunch to take pictures. I just thought, he's a great dude, and I feel really bad for him. Like you said, he had to go through that tragic event with his brother dying and now go through this. And you saw the post that he said where it was say hi to his brother for him in heaven.
Yeah, you really have to feel for that.
Got to feel. It's a hard time, not only for the Gaudreau family, I can't imagine, but it's also a hard time for everyone around him, even fans who looked up to him. I mean, it's tragic. But with that being said, I feel like
one last thing to say on it. We won't forget about Johnny and his brother Matthew. We will keep bringing them up. They left such an impactful legacy on the game and on people throughout the U.S. and throughout hockey that we won't forget them, and we will keep bringing them up. But now it's time to go to the next segment, Breaking the Ice.
David, some exciting news. In T-minus 28 days and a couple hours, T-minus 28 days and 2 hours and 50 minutes, the puck drops. NHL season, regular season, not
and the banner goes up for the Florida Panthers.
No, the banner goes up the day after because they don't have
T-minus 29 days.
But it's an action-packed game. I was looking at the schedule today, actually.
First move that we're going to cover that happened about 2 weeks ago was the Rucker McGroarty saga in Winnipeg finally ending. He is getting traded to the Penguins for the Penguins' best overall prospect in Braden Yeager. It finally comes to an end, and as soon as the trade went down, McGroarty signed his ELC and is projected to play in the Penguins' top 6 on opening night. Jackson, I know you're a huge McGroarty fan, a huge Michigan fan. Why don't you give your thoughts on the trade first from an outsider's perspective, and then I'll give my thoughts.
You forgot to add a huge Rangers fan in there too, and now he's a Penguins player. So I'm kidding. I love McGroarty. Sad to see him go to the rivals, but he's a great player. He was a good captain. It was the men's
World Juniors.
When they played Sweden, I watched that game. It was really good, really back and forth game. He's definitely he's a character. In that game when he went in the final 5 minutes of the penalty box and was kind of mocking the Sweden fans, he's the type of player to get a team rallied up, but also the one that has the skill to win a game. He could score those big time goals. We've seen it before with Michigan. We've seen it in big time moments with the USA. I think it can only be good for the Penguins. I think it's a big loss for Winnipeg, but they did get a prospect back, which is okay. But
who's the Penguins' best prospect? He's projected to become, if everything goes well, he's projected to become a second-line center in the NHL, which is pretty good for Winnipeg.
Yeah, Winnipeg needs.
They need prospects. They do. To supplement for an upcoming years, because right now.
Yeah, no, I'm not saying they don't, but I'm saying I think who won the trade? Pittsburgh. Is that biased because I'm a McGroarty fan? Maybe a bit, but I mean, David, I know you're a Pittsburgh fan, so I want to hear it from you. What you think about this?
So first, obviously, the Penguins saw what they were going to have in Braden Yeager after the Memorial Cup and the WHL playoffs. He obviously had a great season in junior, I believe 95 points, and then 27 points in the Memorial Cup. But they saw what he was going to be. They saw that he might not have the pedigree to become a first-line center in this league, or that quality of an impact player like McGroarty could potentially become. But Winnipeg, they get more than they thought they were going to get from McGroarty. You then, at the draft, there was potential rumors that he was going to be traded to Minnesota. But when Zeev Buim was there on the clock for Minnesota, they couldn't pass him up. And, if you were Winnipeg, you thought maybe that was your only chance to get rid of McGroarty and he could potentially walk next year in free agency. But coming from the Winnipeg perspective, I think it's got to be at least like an A- because you didn't think you could get this quality of a player back in Yeager. But coming from the Pittsburgh perspective, obviously this is something that the Penguins need. They need youth in their lineup. They need youth who's willing to check, who's willing to get gritty, who's willing to mix it up, to muck it up every once in a while. And that's what they get in McGroarty. He could potentially be plug and play opening night on Crosby's wing on the first night. He could potentially help them solve their power play issues that they had over this past season, at one point going upwards of 0 for 40 on the power play. And McGroarty really has that leadership. Like when you think of when Crosby, Letang, and Malkin retire, you don't really think of anyone on that roster that could potentially be the next captain that would be around when all of them are gone. But now, since they get McGroarty, you really see his leadership that stuck out during the World Juniors. And he could potentially become the next captain of the Pittsburgh Penguins when it's all said and done. Now to the next part of news of the week, the Seth Jarvis extension. So over this past week, he signed an 8-year deal for, I believe, $63 million. Now, what's interesting about this contract is he is the first player to have a significant amount of deferred money. Now, we saw that with the Shohei Ohtani contract, where he deferred most of his contract to the 10 years after it's over. But with Jarvis, this is the first time in the NHL that we see the cap hit decrease of the actual contract. Now, it only decreases by about $500,000, give or take, but that's a significant amount in an $87 million salary cap. But it's an overall good deal for Jarvis, who had an electric season this year, playing primarily on Sebastian Aho's wing on the first line. He gets some money, and when his contract's over, basically with all the accrued money and all the accrued interest, on June 30th, I believe 2032, the Carolina Hurricanes will be cutting him a check of $15 million. And that's a large sum of money because of the deferred cap that he's taking and all the accrued money. But Jackson, just give me your overall thoughts on the Jarvis extension. How do you think?
I love my Carolina Hurricanes, David. So genuinely, Jarvis, if I had to choose a favorite player on that team, would be it. He's a very exciting young player. He is really good. I don't really watch Hurricanes hockey because for me, I think their system is great, but when I'm talking about entertainment, it's not the team I go to. The team I go to for entertainment is like an Edmonton, a Florida, a New York. So
Vancouver.
when I do watch them,
Toronto also.
Yeah, they're pretty fun to watch. Not when they have a lead, but so when I think about fun teams, like I said, it's those teams. But when, let's say 2 years ago, or last year when I was watching how the standings would turn out for the Metro, I would watch every game and I would see that, hey, this guy's a difference maker. That's when I first got to kind of hear his name, was last year, because I started kind of watching hockey more. And then this year in the playoffs, it was great. He had, I think it was a couple goals in the first round versus the Islanders, which was a five-game series. And then I think he scored another couple versus the Rangers in a 6-game series. And you just see him every time he's on the ice, he makes a difference, whether it's going in to the zone with the puck, handling it well, or getting back and being a good back checker, or just an exciting young player that you could see him skate and tell that he makes a difference. I think it was a must, especially with the type of off season the Hurricanes had. It was a must to keep him. And it definitely, now looking at my standings, changes them up a bit. But yeah, I mean, speaking of standing predictions,
That's coming up later. We have one more big piece of news
Yeah.
of the week.
And I
So
want to do this one.
we'll go to you first, but the Leon Draisaitl extension. He gets an 8-year deal at $14 million, which totals the full contract over $100 million, amassing his career earnings once the contract's over at around $170 million, give or take. He gets a very signing bonus heavy contract, getting about $15 million a year in signing bonus for the totality of his deal, only making about $1 million in base salary per year. But Jackson, you seem very eager to give your thoughts on this extension. Go ahead.
You see that jersey up there, David?
Yep,
Big
the Zach
Oilers.
Hyman one.
Big Oilers guy. They needed this.
Is it just because the Rangers got smacked
They
again?
needed this so badly, David.
I'm gonna take that as
They
a yes.
needed this. It's a yes. They needed this so badly. You don't understand. I have them making the Cup final this year. I don't have them winning it. I have them making it. I think that Draisaitl getting an extension and them kind of knowing that, hey, he's here, like, but he's in his prime at the same time. Like, he'll be a good player when his contract's almost over, right? Don't get me wrong, but he is in his prime. He is one of the best players. I could say top 5, maybe even top 3 in the NHL. Like
I
any
think
night,
that's fair. It's probably McDavid, McKinnon, Draisaitl.
Matthews,
No,
McKinnon.
I think you could say the top 3. Arguably, most people would say McDavid, McKinnon, Draisaitl, or McDavid, Draisaitl, McKinnon. In some order like that.
Yeah, he's definitely top 5 for sure. So, like I was saying, like the time is now for them. Like they need to win, and I think him signing that contract, it was definitely a lot of money, like a ton of money. But at the same time, he's one of the only players that's worth that amount of money in the NHL. And I think for the amount of production he's going to get, it's going to be a great contract. They'll definitely win one in the next, I think, 8 years that he's there. Like they'll win one for sure, in my opinion, whether it's this year or next or the next couple. But I just think to have him locked down and now you have to focus on getting McDavid, I think that's very good for the Oilers. And I'm excited. I'm really excited. I love the Oilers. I love watching them. Like I said, they're one of my favorite teams to watch. So I'm excited to see how everything turns out this season.
I mean, one huge thing, it's probably even more huge than the Draisaitl extension news that you forgot to mention, is this basically 100% guarantee locks Connor McDavid into signing an extension with the Edmonton Oilers.
Yeah.
McDavid and Draisaitl are like tied at the hip on the ice and off the ice.
He's not leaving now. Like
exactly,
there was rumors that he would go to. I don't know if you heard the rumors, like me, Toronto, because he's from there.
Yeah, well, because he's from there, but like
exactly,
that's just speculation. If Draisaitl wouldn't have signed there,
like if Draisaitl didn't sign, McDavid was gone. That's my opinion.
But look, it's probably the biggest news of the offseason, or not biggest, but one of the most like powerful things of the offseason. Because when Draisaitl put pen to paper, that basically guaranteed McDavid was going to be there for the next 8 years when he has the ability to sign his extension. Because if you think about it, if even though Draisaitl was unlikely to leave, if you think about it, let's go to the alternate scenario. What happens if Draisaitl leaves? How do you think McDavid's going to feel that he's going to be the only one there now who is going to have to put even more weight on his shoulders to potentially carry the Oilers in that type of market? Like, how do you think he would feel in an alternate universe if Draisaitl left?
I think it's like McDavid does so much already, carries the Oilers so much that at some point there's going to be a work overload to where he can't do it. Players' bodies can't be that physically active for that long and be that good. It's like almost impossible. So I think that definitely takes a big weight off of him. And like I said, they are so good. And McDavid, now that they basically have him locked up, I wouldn't be surprised if they make big moves at the trade deadline, or if they're even they could be a President's Trophy winner Like, and they could win multiple cups. Like, they're a good team. Draisaitl, that was my number one re-signing / extension / signing of the whole offseason. So yeah, I mean that's definitely the biggest news.
One more thing about the Oilers. After this Draisaitl extension, they have to get Bouchard done now. So potentially after the Bouchard extension, which I believe he could get upwards of $10 million because of his play this past season, they could have the most expensive core and be topping the Leafs for most expensive core, with McDavid potentially at 16 plus, Draisaitl at 14, and Bouchard at 10. They could have 3 players locked in for over $50 million. Time to go to the third segment of our division ranking and predictions. Start with Atlantic. Obviously, both of us have the Panthers first overall after their cup win. I mean, I have them just barely getting the first seat above the Leafs. The Panthers, 105 points. I think they'll win about 49 games and have about 32 losses split between regulation losses and overtime losses. Like, you saw the losses that they had in the offseason, pretty significant in Montour. But you also saw that they were able to replenish some of it, re-sign some key players to extensions like Lundell and Reinhart, and bring back a great defensive defenseman who proved himself in the playoffs in Dmitry Kulikov. They now have Spencer Knight, who has a full year under his belt after being in the NHL PA assistance program 2 years ago, potentially competing for the backup, letting Bob rest more. And if Knight proves himself, they could still be a key contender in the Eastern Conference. But I think they will take a little bit of a step back because their team does not have as much depth, as much superstar power. But what do you think about the Panthers?
Cup hangover. They're getting the first seed. They're really good. They're only going to get better with experience that they have. They lost some key players. They weren't able to get rid of Ekblad, which I'm not a big Ekblad fan. I think only more experience. They're going to – I have them at 108 points, first in the division and second in the conference. I think they're a good team. And, yeah. It. Like everything you said, but I have a bit more faith in them.
Who do you have as your second seed in the Atlantic?
All right, so this is gonna be a hot take. I think there's some factors into this. I have Detroit.
Why do you have Detroit?
They get Jeremy Swayman is an RFA. Their biggest problem, in my opinion, goaltending. I think if Boston somehow can't get Swayman again, and the Red Wings are able to, that's the goalie they need. That's their goalie of the future.
Can I just say one thing, though?
Wait, let me finish. Let me finish real quick. I think after last season and after what happened to them, how the season ended because of the empty netter for the Capitals and everything, and how the Capitals had the worst goal differential going into the playoffs, I think they're so salty and they're so back. They re-signed Kane. They have a good player, a great player in Dylan Larkin. And if they get Mo Seider and Lucas Raymond on the contracts, they're good. They're in good shape.
I just have one question, though. How do you think they're going to be able to afford Swayman, who it looks like he's commanding upwards of $8 million on the long-term extension, when they have to prioritize re-signing Seider and Raymond, who could potentially also cost $8 million on a long-term extension?
I think if you're the Red Wings, you let go of one of Mo Seider, Lucas Raymond. I think
really.
Yes, I genuinely think what they need is goaltending. That's their main.
But how big of a loss do you think they would have getting rid of their top pairing defenseman who plays penalty kill minutes, power play minutes, who's an all-around great defenseman?
It's a big loss, but I think that's why I think whether they do it or not, they're going to be second in the division. I think they are set. I think they are a great young team. We've seen young teams do well, and we've seen young teams do poorly. I think they're going to be one of the teams that could do really well. I think they have good players. They have experienced players like Patrick Kane. He knows what it takes. He's been in almost every situation you can think of. He's been to the cup. He's made cup runs. He's gotten his team into playoffs when they've needed him. I think they could do it. It's going to take everybody. It's going to be a full team effort, but I think that it's going to be an exciting team to watch for sure. Whether they're making playoffs either way, whether they're second, third, or fourth, I think they're in.
You think it all depends on their goaltending, what positioning they're at in the playoffs?
I really do. I think goaltending wins championships. I think like there's very little times where goaltending is bad and they win championships, like Darcy Kemper. Wow, what a stray. Sorry, guys. But like I said, yeah, I do. I think the Detroit Red Wings are gonna be the second seed. Stand by that. Come back to this at the end of the season.
My second seed in the Atlantic is the Toronto Maple Leafs. They had, all things considered, like compared to the Toronto Maple Leafs' usual offseason, they had an impactful but quiet offseason. They brought in the likes of Chris Tanev, who they've been chasing since last year at the beginning of the season when they tried trading for him, and Zadorov from the Flames. They signed him to a long-term deal in free agency. They brought in Cup champ Oliver Ekman-Larsson on a 4-year deal. They brought in Anthony Stolarz, who could pair up nicely with Joseph Woll for their tandem. Obviously, they had some losses like Tyler Bertuzzi going to the Blackhawks, but this is the time where guys like Matthew Nyes and Nick Robertson and Max Domi, who they re-signed, could step up in his absence and play key minutes on Matthew's line and take a huge step. But also one important thing, they took the C away from Tavares and put it on Matthews. I think this is a huge step in the right direction. Matthews, you saw the writing was on the wall that Tavares isn't going to be there for much longer, even if they sign him to an extension. But Matthews, he took a step in the right direction this year, almost broke the single season goal record, almost hit 70 goals this year. He's taking the step in the right direction. They're turning the team over to the youth movement in Matthews, Marner, Nylander. Tavares is still going to wear a letter, and he could still sign an extension, but I think it's just the step in the right direction. Take a little weight off Tavares' shoulders, allow him to perform in different areas of the lineup. But yeah.
I'm gonna rapid fire my 3 through 8.
Okay.
I think the rest are kind of self-explanatory here. So my 3, Toronto. My 4, Boston. 5, Tampa. 6, Buffalo. 7, Montreal, and 8, Ottawa. What about you?
Do you want to give any thought on any of them?
No, I'm 100% going 8 for 8, so I don't need to give any thought.
My number 3 is actually the Boston Bruins. They're obviously going to take I think they're going to take a little bit of a step back, going down one seat. They obviously had key additions like Elias Lindholm and Nikita Zadorov that they brought in this year on 7-year deal for Lindholm, and I believe 6-year deal for Zadorov. They addressed their center need with Lindholm, but still, I think it's not going to be enough. There's still going to be an adjustment period for Lindholm, who's just coming off of a down season. Number 4th in the division, I have the Lightning. Obviously, a huge step back from previous year of going to the playoffs and being the 3 seed against the Leafs. Obviously, losing Stamkos is a huge loss, but they replaced it with Gensel, who is still in the prime of his career, who's won a cup, who's a good scorer. They obviously traded away Sergachev, which is a bit of an interesting move, but I understand it because they brought in the young guys like former 12th overall pick Connor Geekie and JJ Moser. They also brought back a familiar face in Ryan McDonough. One last thing on the Lightning. In about a week or so, my article going over the Lightning's offseason should be up on flteams.com. Make sure to check that out. Number 5, the Senators. Yeah, check it out in the description. Number 5.
I'm inverted. Hold up, guys. Oh, there we go.
Number 5, the Senators, even though they brought in a great goalie in Linus Ullmark. They brought in a savvy vet in David Perron. They also brought in a bottom six guy in Michael Amadio. They traded away Jacob Chikrin. I still think it's not going to be enough. I don't really think the team is really matured. The sixth seat, I have the Sabres. Obviously, they did a lot. They redid basically their whole bottom six. They bought out Jeff Skinner. They re-signed Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen to a 5-year deal.
That guy.
But I think that this is not going to be enough. They need a real bona fide scorer, someone like a Gensel who could have really helped them on like Thompson's wing. They obviously have a great decor, but their goalie is kind of unproven, even though he played well at the end of the year. But yeah, Red Wings, I think last season was a one-off. They barely missed the playoffs, but they also got a little worse. They did bring back Kane. They lost a guy in Goss to spare. Their goaltending really hasn't changed. As of this moment, on Friday, September 6th, they haven't re-signed either Mo Seider or Lucas Raymond. And the Canadiens, this prediction was made before the acquisition of Patrick Laine. I would put them higher, but going based off of this, I mean, I have them at 87 points, which is really good for an 8th place team. But yeah, Laine, he'll definitely add a different element to their lineup. Yeah. Now let's move on to the Metro. Jackson, who's your first place team in the Metro?
So my first and second are the Cross River rivals, aka Rangers and Devils. I think it's going to be a battle to see who gets first. I think at the end of the day, the Rangers are going to finish off with 114 points, and they're going to win the President's Trophy. And then I have the Devils finishing off with 104 points. But I think the Rangers, like, you know how the Panthers went into the offseason, how Matthew Tkachuk had that quote saying, we're going to win the cup, right?
Yeah.
I think the Rangers are that pissed. I think 2 out of the last 3 years, they've been to the conference finals. 2 years ago, they lost to the Devils after being up 2-0. They always lose being up 2-0. And I think they're sick and effing tired of it. And I think they're going to prove themselves. This is one of their last seasons before Igor takes up 12% of the cap. I think it's now or never for them. I think they didn't do much in the offseason. I don't think they got worse. They may have gotten a bit better. They got Riley Smith, who has won before. He's a great player. And I just think I think they not have experience, but they do. Like they've
been there, done that kind of, except not made it to the cup.
They have, yeah, except they've
experienced every round multiple times.
They've done everything. They have a leader in Chris Kreider. We're not going to bring up the other leader.
We talked about that one last episode.
Chris Kreider and Mika, and they have young talent in Lafreniere and Philip Hedl and Capo Caco, and they have a great second line, which is probably going to be their first this year with centering Vinny Trocheck on the left wing. It's going to be Lafreniere on the right wing. It's going to be Panarin. Just like they got to get it done. They got to. And I know this is a Panthers podcast. I support the Panthers and Lightning. I'm a Rangers fan. Like the Rangers have to. Like it's kind of getting annoying how they keep getting this close to the final step, and everyone's like, "Oh, this is 1994 again." But it's not. It's not 1994 because we would have won the cup if it was 1994, but it wasn't. So I think they'll definitely be good. And then the Devils, you have great player in Jack Hughes, Nico.
They added Pesci,
and they added a new goalie, which was their main problem last season. Jacob Markstrom, who's really good. He was a Vezina finalist a couple years ago. Took kind of a step back last year, but I mean,
he's on a bad Calgary team also.
Yeah, obviously, but I think,
and he was also injured for a little bit. But yeah.
I think if he could play up to his full potential, the Devils have a great chance of even being the number 1 seed or the President's Trophy winner. And then you have young players in Luke Hughes. I think you got some defensemen. They have Dougie Hamilton. I don't know if he's back yet.
He should be back by game 1, I believe, of the Red
He's a good defender. He's a great defender. They have a youngish core. They have some players that have been there, done that, like you said before, but they actually have one. And Andre Palat. Is it Palat? Yeah, it is Palat.
Palat, yeah.
And I just think they're good. And then to rapid fire the rest of my teams, number 3, I have Philadelphia. I think they have a great head coach who's not gonna let them sit back and let what happened happen again. I think they're
They also
pissed.
brought in Mitchkov.
Yeah, they were a
Huge
lock.
addition.
They were a lock in last year, and they blew it with that very bad slump that they had. And then I think I have Carolina taking a bit of a step back, but still making the playoffs.
That's understandable.
I think they lost key players. I think they're a good team. They haven't proven anything in the playoffs, but that they can lose in the second round in the Eastern Conference Finals. They have a great coach. Honestly, in my opinion, the best coach in the NHL.
I think it's probably like him, Cooper, Sullivan.
Yeah, and what's Vancouver?
Maurice. Oh, and Talkett, yeah.
Love Talkett. And then I got Pittsburgh at the 5. It depends how I like. It could be the top 3 Atlantic. I could see Pittsburgh going in as a second wild card. They got McGroarty. Crosby's Crosby. He could do anything he wants. He's one of the best players in the world. He's getting old, but it's okay. He's still capable of carrying a team if he needs to. We saw that last year. Almost put them in the playoffs the last 2 years. And I mean, yeah, they're good. Then you have the Islanders taking a big step back. I just don't really like. They really didn't do anything in the
They added Duclair. That's probably the only major thing.
But Duclair is not the type of player that they needed more than Duclair. I just don't think they got much of anything. Then I have the Capitals. They had the worst goal differential going into the playoffs since '93. I'd want to say it was 93.
You might be right.
They got swept in the first round. They looked horrible. Ovechkin didn't have a point in that series. He's getting old. He'll probably break the goal record, but they're not a great team. And then Columbus Blue Jackets. This was before the passing of Johnny Gaudreau, but that's only a step back. You hate seeing what happened to him, and
you also have to think about the toll that's going to take on the team.
Exactly,
another emotional loss.
It could either propel them or it could make them worse. But I mean, it sucks. I don't want to say this, but they also did lose their best player, so which was out of their control. And it's not like he's on the IL. It's not like a player that's on the IL. He's gone. He's passed away. He's not coming back, and
it's a sad thing.
Replace that, and obviously you have players like Fantilli and
Dillinger, Jenner, Sean Monahan, Werenski.
Obviously, you have players like that, but they're not an all-around team that I could see not even getting it done, let alone winning. I have them winning 30 games. They could be the worst team in the NHL. I think they could end up getting the first overall pick.
So my Metro standings, the first 2 are the same except they flipped. I think the Devils arguably had the best offseason in the league. If you talk to people around the league, if you talk to fans, you'll hear them talk about the addition of Markstrom. Goaltending was what they needed last year. They could have made it in. They added a guy in Brett Pesce, who's a proven top forward defenseman. They also added a defensive defenseman in Brendan Dillon, who's proven and who's a good vet. Rangers, didn't really do anything. They lost Gustafsson to the Red Wings. They added Riley Smith, but it looks like he could be on the decline. They didn't really do anything to warrant them taking a significant step back, but they didn't do anything to warrant them taking a significant step ahead. Canes I have at 3. Obviously, they're the Canes. They're going to get it done the regular season with their grinding system. They've just brought back Natchez and Jarvis. Obviously, they lost Gensel and Shea and Pesce. The Penguins I have at 5. Obviously, they took a huge step back after they lost Gensel. The power play didn't work at all. They obviously brought in guys like McGroarty. They brought in Kevin Hayes, Cody Glass. Anthony Beauvillier, Matt
Was
Grizzlick.
there a moment in the beginning of the season where you guys had more short-handed goals and power play goals?
That is correct. That is correct.
Sorry. And your goalie had more goals. Sorry.
That is also correct. The Capitals, obviously, they did some significant things. They brought in P.L. Dubois, trade for Andrew Mangiapane, traded Darcy Kemper to the Kings, traded for Logan Thompson, signed Matt Roy to a 6-year deal, trade for Jacob Chikrin. I still don't think it's going to be enough, though. They really don't have that many talented offensive forwards. Ovechkin's slowing down. I agree with Jackson that he will probably break the goal record, but they really didn't do anything to wow me this offseason, and they made it in by a fluke last year. The Flyers, obviously, I think they're still in the rebuild. Obviously, Michkov came over. They didn't really do anything in the offseason. They did buy out Ryan Johansson, but I think it'll be appealed by him and the NHLPA. And then the Blue Jackets, obviously, this was our standings were made before the tragic passing of Johnny and his brother Matthew, but I still think the Blue Jackets aren't going to get really much done. They did draft Caden Lindstrom from Medicine Hat in the WHL. They did sign Sean Monahan, who's projected to be the first-line center this year, but I still think that not a lot's going to get done. Now we're going to move on to the Central. My top two are Dallas. Obviously, they had an electric year last year. They did lose Tanev. They did bring back Duchesne. They did add Matt Dumba and Ilya Lyubushkin to the D-core. They did bring in Casey DeSmith to back Jake Ottinger up. Obviously, Jamie Benn, his contract's coming to an end this year, I believe. They still have to sign Thomas Harley, but they're still an all-around good team. Avalanche, they did bring back Drew and Landeskog. It looks like he could potentially start the year, even though he was supposed to start playing late in the season. Rantanen primed for an extension potentially could happen. Goaltending is still a question, though, as Georgiev did not play the best last year at the end of the season. Jackson, who are your first two?
I have Nashville. Obvious reasons. They had the best offseason. Additions of Stamkos and other key players. They have one of the best GMs in the league.
Trotz, a former great head coach.
Amazing head coach. Miss that guy. But like Nashville, it's like turning into a hockey town, in my opinion. Like it's just like exciting.
It's been a hockey
town.
Not
like no, but like when I think of hockey towns, I think of Detroit, New York, like Boston, Montreal, Toronto, Ottawa, even.
I think even before their cup run, they were filling up the stadium every night. It's been a hockey town.
I mean, this is their most exciting team. Like
fair enough.
This is going to be their most exciting team. They can make a cup run. They're good enough to. I have them finishing first in the Central, second in the conference at 110 points.
In the Western.
Yeah, and then I have Dallas at number 2. Like literally everything you said. They have one of the best goaltenders in the league. I don't know if you said that. Jake Ottinger.
Oh yeah, I did not say that.
I love that guy. He's really good. And then my third is Colorado. When you have Nathan McKinnon, anything can happen. And then I have Winnipeg. Horrible first round. But I mean, you have Connor Hellebuck, and he could win you a lot of games, steal you a lot of games.
Could win you the cup.
Hasn't happened, but he could. And then I have St. Louis 5. I don't know, man. Like they're good, but I just don't like. They have Jordan Kyrou, very young, talented player.
Robert Thomas,
Buchnevich,
Shen,
and what's that other guy that was traded from the Rangers?
Sammy Blaze not on the team.
Sammy Blaze not on the team?
No, he signed a PTO with Vancouver a few weeks back.
Brutal. He was a great player. Then I have Chicago, Connor Bedard. That's all I have to say. Utah, I can't wait to watch them. They're going to be
Can we
so.
just take 1 minute to appreciate their jerseys? Even though they're not going to be their permanent jerseys, they're still
so nice.
absolutely beautiful.
Dude, that teal aqua blue
And the black just goes perfect.
The black, oh my god, it's like the Dallas Stars full black kind of
Oh
like
yeah, with the green.
with
I
the
think pretty
very
soon you're
neon
gonna be.
green.
I think pretty soon you're gonna have one hanging up in your background. Yeah.
100%. Like I that's a jersey I would get. And then I have Minnesota. I mean, it's not exciting. Like you have Kirill Kaprizov, you have Marc-Andre Fleury, who's very old now. He's not going to steal you many games, and you have Matt Zuccarello. But like, I don't know. Matt Boldy, but I just don't see them doing anything. Like, it's hard because for me, I love their young players and I love the team, but I just don't see them doing anything. Like, they're not an exciting enough team for me to be like, hey, they're gonna be even in the conversation. I think teams like Chicago and teams like Utah are gonna be better than them. Which obviously by my saying prediction is what I think, but like I don't know how to explain it other than I just like I don't see it coming together in a way. Like I don't see it being a good year for them.
I understand. So for my third place in the Central, I have the Predators. Obviously, they made some significant moves, bringing in Marchessault, Shea, Stamkos, freeing up some cap and trading Cody Glass to the Pens. Obviously, they traded arguably their number one prospect, Yaroslav Askarov, to the San Jose Sharks in exchange for prospect David Enstrom, a protected first-round pick, goaltender Magnus Corona. But yeah, they overall had a very good offseason. The Jets, obviously, they lost Sean Monahan in free agency. They bought out Nate Schmidt. Their decor looks to be a little better. Obviously, we don't know what's going on with Perfetti because he's still an RFA at this moment on Friday, September 6th. Obviously, they traded away McGroarty and they have Jaeger coming up in the wings, but that doesn't apply to this season. At number 5, I have Utah Hockey. They drafted TJ Ginla at pick 7, which was very surprising, but a great pick. They brought in their number 1 defenseman, Mikhail Sergachev, who's projected to be in every situation possible for them. They re-signed Sean Dursey. They brought in a great defensive forward in Kevin Stenlin. They trade for John Marino. But yeah, their uniforms are beautiful. They're gonna have an excited. They're gonna have an excited fan base. Everyone's definitely excited to see them. The Wild, obviously they were in heavy pursuit of Patrick Laine, even though he was traded to Montreal. They couldn't get him. They signed Yakov Trenin to a 4-year deal. They really didn't do much. They still have that giant buyout, a cap hit from Suter and Parise lying over their heads for another year until it decreases significantly. Blackhawks, they made some key moves, putting some talent around Bedard and Bertuzzi, Teuvo Teravainen, trading for Ilya Mikheyev, bringing in Cup champ and Alec Martinez, signing Laurent Brossoit, former Cup champ, signing TJ Brody. But I still think they are taking a step in the right direction, but it's not going past like the 6th seat direction. And then 8, the Blues, obviously, they traded away Kevin Hayes this year. Torrey Krug is going to be out for the year. They signed Ryan Suter, signed P.O. Joseph. They got Radek Faksa in a cap dump and Matthew Joseph in a cap dump. They made the shocking offer sheets of Philip Broberg and Dylan Holloway. By the way, I think I speak for both of us when I say we would love offer sheets from now on. It's a fun, exciting thing that generally doesn't happen. But I still think they're just starting their rebuild, even though they did get Broberg and Holloway. Now let's go on to the Pacific
Division standings. Yeah. Thank you very much. We got the Edmonton Oilers, baby, number 1. McDavid, Draisaitl, Stewie. That's all I got to say. Then my number 2, we're going to go Vancouver. I think it's going to be a tight battle between Oilers and Vancouver. I think Vancouver is going to take a bit of a step back. But I think they're still going to be good. Number 3, Vegas LTIRs, as I like to call them. But Yeah, I like them. They're going to make the playoffs. They always do. They're going to make a stupid trade deadline acquisition that they can't afford, and they're going to be 100 million over the cap space, but cap hit. But it's fine. 4, Seattle. It's the Kraken. They have the nicest jerseys in the league right now. Like with an actual logo, they have the nicest jerseys. That's all I have to say. And then 5, we got to go Los Angeles Kings. Show them it. Do you not have it on right now?
Oh, I do. The Ante Kopitar versus retro jersey that you got.
Yeah, exactly. That's why they're going to be number 5. Number 6, Calgary. Like we said before, they should retire Johnny Gaudreau's number. This has nothing to do with my standings. I just realized, but like, it's my reasoning why. Like this, because I don't follow the Pacific. I think they're the most boring division in all of hockey. So I know the least about the division. I'm not gonna lie, guys. But like, if you're like a fan that doesn't know about it, this is how you go. This is how you should go about it, right? Am I right? Like number 7, Anaheim Ducks. They should be number 1 because of their jerseys, but they're not. They're number 7 because Trevor Zegras is overrated. Ryan Strome can't hit an empty net, and Frank Vetrano is their only good player on the team, and they have a good goalie and
John Gibson
but
and Lucas Dostal.
I love that guy. NHL be a pro legend, but or franchise legend. But yeah, I mean, they're number 7. They're a young, exciting team. I still think they have a ways to go. San Jose, 50 points. Like they have Macklin Celebrini. They
And
got
Will
Tyler
Toffoli.
and I just I don't know. They could be like 6th seed, they could be 8th. Pacific is so hard to predict because teams like Edmonton start off like 0-10 and then they make the cup final. So you can't really predict them. But David, you want to give the fans some reasonable standings now?
Yeah, all right. So I have the Canucks at 1. Obviously, great offseason. Bring in DeBrusk to play on Pedersen's wing, upgrading the size on their defense. Bring in Vincent Desharnais, re-signing Tyler Myers, Phil Peronic. Bring in Derek Forberg, great defensive defenseman. Bring back a key guy in Dakota Joshua. Re-signing Artur Shilovs, who played great for them in the playoffs. At number 2, I have the Oilers, just 2 points behind the Canucks. By the way, the Canucks, I have them going second for President's Trophy. I have the Devils first for President's Trophy. But the Oilers, they brought in Victor Arvidsson on a 2-year deal. He's potentially going to play on Draisaitl's line. They brought in Jeff Skinner on a 1-year deal, great deal. Also going to play on Draisaitl's line. They lost guys like Phil Broberg and Dylan Holloway to the offer sheets by St. Louis. They traded away Cody Ceci, got his cap hit off the books so they could potentially make a move later on down the road. Knights at 3, obviously they lost a key heart and soul guy and the Conn Smythe winner in Jonathan Marchessault, but they did get a former top 10 pick in Alexander Holtz. They did get Akir Schmid from the Devils, who could, although Holtz hasn't proven to be the guy that he was thought to be when he was drafted, he could potentially replace a little bit of that production. They brought in Ilya Samsonov to be the backup after they traded Logan Thompson to the Capitals. At 4, I have the Kraken. Obviously, they made 2 huge moves and bring in Brandon Montour, who's projected to play on the second pair with Jamie Oleksiak. They traded away Brian Dumoulin to the Ducks. So Riker Evans now has a spot potentially on the third pair. They also brought in a key guy for Vegas, who was a key guy for Vegas when they won the Cup, in Chandler Stevenson. And he's going to take a significant amount of pressure off Matty Beniers and Shane Wright when they have to go up against great center teams like the Oilers or the Canucks. Kings, I have them at 5th in the division. Obviously, they traded away P.L. Dubois in exchange for Darcy Kemper. They lost a key defensive defenseman in Matt Roy. But now Brant Clark is going to have a bigger opportunity to play. Obviously, Kemper isn't the goalie that he once was with the Avalanche, but I don't think the Kings really did much. Do you have a comment about Kemper?
Yes. Like I said before, He was never a star goalie.
I didn't say he was. I just said he isn't the goalie that he was with the Avalanche the year they won.
They wouldn't even be top 5 if he was the goalie that he was with the Avalanche. He has to be
Obviously
Igor,
not.
right?
Well, obviously
2022
not.
Igor. Like
Well, I'm saying now, like when he was with the Avalanche, he was a little bit above average. Now he's like
he was above
average to below
in the
average.
playoffs. He was definitely bottom 6. My opinion.
Um,
Go on with your standings.
Yeah, 6. I have the Sharks. Obviously, I think they're going to take a huge step. Macklin Celebrini is so talented. We don't obviously know what's going on with Logan Couture at the moment, but he could potentially play for them this season. He could potentially not, depending on his injury status. Will Smith, it was a great thing for them that they convinced him to come to them instead of going back to college for another year. They brought in Tyler Toffoli, who could be on Celebrini's line, who's a pro's pro. He can score. They brought in Bartley Goodrow, who's a former developed player by them, to play in the bottom 6. They trade for Ty Dellandrea. They trade for Jake Wallman. They got a second-round pick with him. It was a cap dump by the Red Wings. And they also got a great goaltender prospect in Askarov for a first-round pick from the Predators. At number 7, I have the Anaheim Ducks. Obviously, they traded for Robbie Fabry. They got Brian Dumoulin. They have Cutter Gauthier. They drafted Beckett Sinet at 3rd overall this year. They have a very young defense core minus Gudis and Cam Fowler. One thing I would like to say, there's potential rumblings that Gudis could be the next captain of the Anaheim Ducks. I also would have to agree that the jerseys are sick, but there's a potential possibility that by the time Gudis, who's representing the Ducks in next week's NHL media tour in Vegas, by the time he arrives, he could potentially have the C on his jersey. And then last place, I have the Flames. Do you have something to say about the Ducks, Jackson?
I love them.
And then last place, I have the Flames. Obviously, they didn't do much. They did re-sign Igor Sharangovich to a 5-year deal. They brought in Jake Bean, a local kid, to play on the third pair. They obviously traded away Markstrom. They're going to have Wolf potentially play full-time this year. They brought in Anthony Mantha on a 1-year deal. Potential prove it and flip him at the deadline type deal. But yeah, that's all our standings. Jackson, we have one more segment and we're going to start off.
I want to introduce this one, and I have a little idea to it. To make it more fun, this segment is going to end this episode, and then we're going to start the next episode or the following episode, every episode beginning with it. It's called Hot Takes. We say a hot take, no context at all, and then we have to say why the next episode. So I want all you guys in the comments to guess why we're saying it. And this category this year is a hot take for this regular season. San Jose makes the playoffs.
Okay. Thank you guys so much for tuning into FL Teams. Just a quick plug. Go follow our Instagram, Benchwarmers NHL on Instagram.
Amazing graphics down there.
We post daily. Jackson is the brains behind the graphics there. He's been doing daily posts up until the NHL season. I imagine he'll be posting clips, highlights, news, everything. Jackson will be posting about all the news for that. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. I'm your host, David Markovitz, alongside my co-host, Jackson Heller. And that's episode number 2, talking about our standings predictions. Peace.